Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to be letting people in gradually. We'll get started here in a couple minutes and hope you enjoy this program today. And we were just talking about how good it is to have people be able to finally stay inside and be cool as it's so hot out that we're not used to. So we're going to ask you to mute your microphones when you come in and leave your cameras on so we can see we're dealing with living people. Hey. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I think you're going to find this a very, very interesting program. We've got an amazing resource at Kutztown that we're going to learn more about today. I'm Dave Myers. I'm the director of the Berks Alliance. We hold these spotlight programs periodically throughout the year, highlighting things of interest and importance to the broader community. We do record the programs. We will post them on the Berks Alliance website. We will send them to our friends at BCTV, the Community Media Center, but we also send a copy of the video to all the people who register for the program. We asked you to use the chat function at the bottom of the screen to submit your comments or questions, and we will get to those once we get through our formal presentation. And we will begin that in a minute. I'm going to introduce John Weidenhammer, who's the chairman of the Berks Alliance, for a brief welcome. John?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks, David, for your introduction and also for organizing what I think is going to be a most enlightening presentation about a really unique lab that has been set up at Kutztown. Dave and I, a few years ago, had an opportunity to tour the SMASH lab and just found the work that they're doing there absolutely fascinating, and we believe that we needed to bring that to the community. So I want to thank our presenters, Keith and Mo, today for the work that they've done in putting this presentation together. And on behalf of the investors in the Berks Alliance, I just wanted to thank everybody for participating in our session today. As you know, the Berks Alliance is a collaboration of anchor institutions in Berks County, and we have a focus on community development, and our work includes trying to improve the health, wealth, and education attainment of the citizens of Berks County. And to that end, we think that this programming is essential to providing a robust place for the citizens of Berks County to live, work, play, and achieve and learn. So with that, Dave, I'll turn it back to you.
Good. Thank you, John. Yeah, I think you're going to find this a very, very interesting, very fascinating resource that we have in our community to learn more about. I'm honored to introduce our two presenters today. They are Keith Massey. Keith is an associate professor at Kutztown. He is a board certified social media intelligence analyst with a wide range of experience. Also joining Keith will be Mo Falk, who's professor of digital rhetoric at Kutztown. He and Keith are the co-architects of the SMS Major and the SMASH Hub at Kutztown University. The SMS Major is Social Media Theory and Strategy degree, and the SMASH isn't what it sounds like, I don't think. It's the Social Media Analytics Strategic Hub, and you're going to find out a little bit more about that. They have both received the John Schellenberg Teaching Award for their work at Kutztown. So we're honored to have both of you join us and hopefully learn a lot more about what you're doing up there. Keith, I'm going to go to you first. I think.
I'm actually going to default to Mo. He's going to begin an overview and a context, and then we'll go into a different context. So I'm going to leave it to Matt.
Yeah, so we offer a certificate that is 9 credits and 3 courses. That's actually open to anybody who has a high school degree, could be anywhere in the world. We also have a minor for Kutztown students and the major. So I'm going to give you the overall context for the program, and I'll try to move fast so we can make sure we have enough time to focus on questions and things like that. But if there is something that comes up or you want to bring up a particular one about that slide, feel free to jump into the chat. Next slide, Keith. So it's, pretty self-evident at this point how ubiquitous social media is, but it's certainly tricky to, think about all the different uses of it, especially within academia. I mean, just think of how, had you gone back 5 years, I don't think people would have anticipated, TikTok and the amount of changes that brought, basically just based on a different kind of algorithm. So especially in academia, they tend to be a little bit far behind, but especially when it comes to, visuals and integrating visuals. So for example, I'm housed in an English department, and, film was obviously a very powerful media, but it wasn't until like the 1980s that, film classes and, film majors even became established. Then when you have, early internet, and you have all these multimodal texts of mixing digital image, that still took a while to look at. So, we didn't want to get stuck behind in looking at social media through these academic lenses. If you think about, what social media has basically not taken over, but made useful, are originally, right, they just think it's going to be a social life. Next thing you know, think of how it impacts all of our political decisions, but also political fundraising and things like that. If you think about in 2008, when they asked John McCain, when he was running about Twitter, he was like, "What's that?" And within 8 years later, we have candidates who were basically making their whole platform through social media. So when you look at our economic lives, they're impacted by how we treat social media, even if we don't base our career about social media, right? You could be hired, fired based on your social media usage. And even our civic lives, how many people, for example, belong to a local neighborhood social media thing where you can keep an eye on who's been not cleaning up after their dog, or, stuff like that. You never know. It just, anything could happen on there, right? Next slide. So with that in mind, we undertook to, build a program that would be responsive to the needs of business and really try to position our students. And the interesting thing is, when most academic majors are built, there's usually a governing body, an accreditation body that basically gives them a blueprint, says, here, take these courses and you have to have one of this, one of that. When we went to build a complete undergrad major, there was basically nothing for us to go by. There were a couple programs that were based with business programs for certificates maybe, or a small add-on at the undergrad or graduate level, but really no dedicated bachelor's of science programs. And we wanted to make sure that it was a BS so that we could recruit the analytics side and the math and the, that side of the degree as well. So we started in fall 2017 with only internal transfers being allowed. And as of spring 2023, we're up to 51 majors and 73 minors. And again, with COVID, it was a little difficult to try to teach these classes and do the outreach that we usually do, but we have a lot of interest, especially from students picking up the minor recently. And we've recruited students that have come from, I'm teaching actually our senior capstone, and we have people from Vermont in the course. We have people from Maryland. Maryland actually offers students financial aid. If you want a major that you can't find in the state and you go out of state, they'll kind of help you with it. So we actually have a student or two from Maryland who's getting some assistance with financial aid because of our program. So on the whole, our actual size is department size, but we're a small program housed within communication studies, which is housed within our visual and performing arts major, but it also involves the English department, which is housed in liberal arts and science, and our marketing department, which is housed in the College of Business. So we're one of the only true interdisciplinary majors that run across just about every college at the university. Next slide. So our goal when we set it up was to basically think of it almost like this Venn diagram. So we have humanists, so we try to focus on content creation, the writing side. We have technical writing electives, we have writing for social media, but also the ethics side, right? If you don't have an ethical bent, you certainly could use social media for a lot of terrible things. So we have required ethics courses. Then for our data scientists, we have social media analytics at multiple levels. We also have math electives and multiple courses from computer science. And from the business side, we have a variety of marketing courses. So our goal was to get that middle where you see the SMS so that our students are well-versed in each of the three, but they have enough flexibility that if they decide, you know what, I'm really super into the analytics, they can concentrate more on that side of the degree. Or we get a lot that are into marketing, plus they can also pick up minors such as public relations, marketing to go even heavier, professional writing. We even have a technical writing minor and certificate. So we've seen a lot of students, and during advising, we try to make sure that they're picking something that's going to help them down the road. Next slide, please.
Whoops.
And obviously on the job market, when we had to go through the state to get this approved, we were kind of floored ourselves with the amount of jobs just within social media of KU. So we actually have some students that are signed and ready to go in their junior year, and they're just like, oh, I got to finish my senior year before I start working. But the labor market for our graduates is, really strong, and our students have a pretty clear advantage because they have a dedicated social media degree. So I think for a long time there was just sort of a default, oh, you're under 21, therefore you know how to use social media, right? And it's certainly not the case when you look at any other technology that we just assume an age means you know how to use it. Our students have to do an internship, and a lot of our students get paid pretty decently for the internships. And we have people reaching out to us weekly. Hey, do you have any students? So we're always looking to try to, add more internships, just because as the program grows, we're going to need to try to funnel people into the internships as well. Next slide, please.
So I'm going to take over here to move away from the program itself and into the SMASH, which is the Social Media Analytics Strategic Hub. I'm going to give a little historical context and the serendipity of this outcome. And that is that I was at a conference and I went to visit a talk. The director of where I did my master's was retiring, and they were doing this thing. So I went to my master's program, like party thing, and they had some devices there that are related to what is in the SMASH. I start talking to them, and they have a little smaller thing than we have that they call the SMAC, the Social Media Analytics Command Center. It's at Illinois State University where I did my master's. So I start talking to them about that space. That was like the second space ever generated at an academic program. Clemson University, which was also an Illinois State grad, developed another space like that at Clemson, and they started modeling the one at Illinois State. So Mo and I got funding to travel out and see that space and talk to them. Oddly enough, the person that I talked to at Illinois State, who is running their kind of lab, actually went to the same school that Mo did for his PhD, and Mo knew the guy. So there is serendipity in the development of this. And so we took kind of their ideas and we upgraded them to the latest technology in a way. So they had kind of thrown something together in a small room that used to be like a dark room for photography, and they needed to use the space in some other way. So it's like a pretty small space that they were working with, so they couldn't do a lot with it. But they gave us kind of the impetus and the foundation for kind of thinking through this. And so we took newer technology and we used more the value of the space that we have to make actually a very active classroom versus this like little lab that people go to on the side during their coursework. And so the SMASH is set up so that it can use different technologies to collect and analyze and visualize data from social media. It was actually a finalist in the International Audiovisual Classroom Awards. And that I left this on here so that you could kind of get a better perspective of it. There's a link here that if you go to, it's on the Communication Studies website. It's kind of a little hidden on that website. This link will take you to a 360 version of the space. So if you can't get to the space and see the space, you can click on this link and you'll get a feel of being in the room and being able to move left and right and look through the room as if you're standing in the center of the room, which is a little better, but you don't see like the activity. This is the logo that was designed for it. And this is kind of a look at the space. Actually, it's kind of an old picture because the if you look on the left, the big black thing actually slides in between those two white pillars. And on the other side of that, which you can't see, there's actually kind of a mobile unit that we could actually roll and take place. I've taken it to University of Philly, Community College, the Community College of Philadelphia, took it there to go a presentation. I've taken it on campus to events that we could kind of take elements of the Smash and make them mobile. We can't do as much, but we can do some with that mobile unit. And so this is kind of what it looks like. There are these chairs that students can roll and move and create groups. Over here, you can see there are 2 monitors here, 2 monitors here. There are 2 monitors here. There's a huge monitor back behind here that you can't see. And then there's another 2 sets of monitors. And what it makes is what we call pods. There are pods that let students work in groups. And the technology in the space allows for any information to be cast to a monitor. So they can use their cell phone, an iPad, a laptop, and they could cast it onto one of the monitors. And then the room is set up so that any monitor can move anywhere else. So if we're doing something and somebody's showing something that's valuable, we can just press a button and it would end up going to every monitor or to whichever monitors we want. We can just put it to 2 monitors or 5 monitors. And this lets us share information more readily and learn from each other's mistakes. As they're doing coding in this space and they make a mistake, if it's a common mistake, I can share the mistake with everybody and I don't have to repeat myself. If it's a shortcut, they find a way to cut the code down and find a more efficient way of doing it, I can share it with everybody, and everybody kind of gains from everybody's labor as they work in the space in a way. One of the things in this space that we use, it's not actually in the space, but the space uses it, is the TCAT. This is called the Twitter Capturing and Analysis Toolkit. It was developed at the University of Amsterdam a few years back, probably 15 years. It's only, according to the frequently asked questions, it's only at 5 other schools. It's at Yale, St. Joseph's, Boston University, University of Texas, Austin, and Kutztown. So 4 other US schools at the time that we set up ours. And so the TCAT actually allows us to access Twitter from the back end, from the API, and archive data. So we're piling up data. We can do it on a variety of topics. Some of these topics were selected by students, some were selected by faculty. But right now, that TCAT is storing over 500 million tweets. So we're over 500 million tweets stored on a variety of topics. So we have anything from Game of Thrones being archived to Colin Kaepernick to the coronavirus. The coronavirus data, I got a grant and worked with a couple of professors in social work. We're working on having a publication about how CDC messaging about mitigation practices permeated through Twitter. So we could get the whole data set and see, okay, here are the messages being sent by the CDC, which ones are being picked up on Twitter and shared and being driven forward, and which ones are kind of dying off and not kind of getting rooted and disseminated. And so that data set from coronavirus, 130 million tweets on coronavirus during the early parts of the pandemic from March to May. And so it hadn't even changed the word COVID-19, it's still coronavirus. So the data set is really valuable for digging into it. And this is kind of what the interface looks like. It's kind of simplistic in some regards, but it'll tell you what you're searching here. This is an old search from Kutztown from 3/18 of the March 12th to March 22nd in 2018. At that time, there were about 1,300 tweets that used the word Kutztown, with about 895 different users sharing those tweets. We can see a pattern of the tweets across time. The TCAT does more than that, but for our purposes, because we have other things to use, we use it mostly for archiving to get the large data sets and store the data, because data is really expensive. When Andrew Yang was a presidential candidate, he was talking about how data is more valuable than oil. If the data set that we have for coronavirus that I use for research, if we had to purchase that from a third-party vendor, it would have been about $250,000 in value. And so getting this archived data becomes really valuable, that we have these things to use that there's no cost to us except the storage and the setup. So when we're doing analysis, we use RStudio. It's free software that allows for analysis and visualization of data. It takes some technical savvy, but what happens is, instead of getting a third-party vendor, which was one option that we took for a little while, the problem with a third-party vendor for doing analysis is when the students go out in the real world, they don't have that third-party vendor. So they actually either have to get the company that they work for to start buying the access to that, or they are going to have to tweak what they're doing. Whereas this RStudio is free software you can download on any computer. It's just technical because you got to learn how to write code in R. But that means that when they leave Kutztown, they have a task and skill that is that can be moved, is flexible in whatever space they go to. And so this is just a simple example of it. This is RStudio. There are these 4 different frames. I don't have to go into all of them, but these are just kind of notes. This is the code itself. This is a visualization of the code. And so this example is looking at what's called NRC sentiment analysis, where you look at the sentiment of what's being said, and it breaks it into the 8 basic emotions of psychology. So you have fear, anger, disgust, sadness, surprise, joy, trust, and anticipation. And you can see which of those emotions are being expressed about this topic the most. So whatever data this is that's being analyzed, anticipation and trust are the 2 highest elements that are in the data, in the language being used by the people tweeting. We also use Gephi from time to time. This is network visualization software. What it looks for is something that people don't often think about when it comes to social media. When we think of social media, on the one side, we think of content, and that is like, okay, what's said? What does this person say? What should I say? Right? That's kind of the humanist side that Mo alluded to. And then we can look at, trends like predictive analytics. Okay, this is going this way. Is this heading? But there's also network analysis, and that is pretty much who's talking to who. And that's valuable because sometimes there are members of the network where the information of the product's going out, and maybe they become a gatekeeper. The network connects through this one node. So if you want to get your information to everybody, you're going to have to get that one node, that one individual, that one organization on board. So analyzing how the network is structured tells you sharing information with who. You don't know what information you're sharing because that's content, but sometimes that's valuable because there are things like this element of what's called ghost influence. And ghost influence is where someone is being mentioned related to this product or this idea, but they actually aren't talking about it themselves. So a simple example of that is if we looked at a network about a Mission Impossible movie, right? And then we see that Tom Cruise's Twitter handle is being mentioned all the time, but he's not mentioning it. Well, it's clear it's because he's an actor, in the main actor of that. And so in that case, it's very obvious why it is. But if you had ghost influence where everybody in the network's talking about this one person, but you don't know who that person is, but they're talking about your product and this person, then you need to find out who that person is, because people associate your product with that person, and you need to try to make sure they're saying positive things about your product or your entity. And so network maps kind of look like this. There are these nodes, they're like dots. These can be hashtags. If you have a hashtag map, they can be individuals or organizations, like if you're doing Twitter handles. But what are the connection between these entities, and where do they cluster? Like where are groups of clustering, and where are kind of nodes that are gatekeepers, that things have to flow through to get 2 sections of the network connected. And so it's not about what's being said, and it's not about trends in what's happening. It's about who's talking to who. And so that's another type of analysis. And you can do that with this software called Gephi that we use. And so, just wrap this up so we can have more time for questions. But pretty much the SMS program is fairly new still. In 2017 is just not that long ago in the scheme of things. But we've added some new elements to it. We have a user experience research and design course. This is about, how things function, how users go about using things. And we also have, I didn't put it on the list, but we worked with the sports management people and we got eye tracking software. So if we wanted to do any type of research where people looked at a website or looked at a page and we wanted to track where they were looking when, we have that technology. We have an advanced social media analytics course. We have a regular one that covers the beginnings of R, but the advanced one goes into more predictive analytics, things like k-means clustering or naive Bayesian modeling or linear regression modeling, things that actually start to try to predict the outcomes or look at patterns. So decision tree modeling or what's called random forest. That's the advanced class. And then just lately, maybe just a few weeks back, we had a new certificate passed. That's the social media analytics certificate. So we currently have a social media strategy certificate, which is 4 classes, kind of gives an overview. It has the intro course, the marketing, the writing, and the beginning of analytics to give an overview for people with a certificate. The social media analytics certificate really just focuses on that. So it just has the overview course, then the first analytics course, and the second analytics course that will be available this coming fall for people. It's looking for people. It's anybody can technically take it, but it's trying to work on workforce development, people developing new skills in their jobs. So it'll try to be more online classes, more evening classes. They'll try to do that for these types of courses to increase access to people who have other obligations. And so that leaves me to say, are there any questions? So, leave that, and I'm going to stop sharing. So
I'm going to ask you to keep this up, put it back up, Keith, if you wouldn't mind. Is it possible for you to do the 360 to show people what it looks like?
I think it'd be easier to do the 360. Let me get the 360 on my screen first, and then
Okay.
I'll share that screen. So let me go
Okay.
get. That's a good idea.
And we have some questions, and hopefully people will submit some more questions.
Let's close this.
And while we're doing that, I'm going to ask both of you, how did you, social media wasn't a subject of study, as you know, until fairly recently. How did you guys get involved in this?
So we actually had a small minor that was interdisciplinary between English communication and our basically television and media. That was kind of the catch-all because it was so kind of siloed, right? English was mostly worried about print, and it was called digital and new media. It got so big so quickly that it became a little bit too diffuse. But on the same side, the admin was very interested because it had so many students, and they said, why don't you turn it into a major? And that's when we decided this is our opportunity to really focus on something more specific, and that's social media. Because if we kept it to digital and new media, that would just be so huge. It wouldn't have been a great benefit to our students.
And Keith will let you show us.
Yeah, so can you see it as on your screen?
Yep.
Okay, so this is what opens, and you can rotate it left or right. So this is over here where my cursor is. Can you see my cursor moving? The two things there.
Yep.
Over here is like the instructor position. There's a computer here that kind of controls everything in the room. You can use it to move anything from one screen to the next. This thing that this says, welcome to the Smash, this is actually the mobile unit. So this is like this gray tower, and it goes down to these wheels. And there are 2 screens here. So this thing can roll and go somewhere else, and it'll have some of the things that we do. It's kind of a miniature model of it. We have this is actually whiteboards. We have whiteboards throughout so that we can write notes and people can work on different tasks with these little whiteboards that roll. This is the main instructor kind of thing. It's a large monitor. It can convert into like a whiteboard, so we can write on it if we want, or we can show things there. And then that whatever we put on the main monitor, we can move to these little monitors. So in this picture, every monitor has the exact same thing on it, but you could have everything different. So you could have this right here on just the left here and have something else on the right. And then you have these monitors over here. And again, you could have this image on the left or the right or whatever. Now, the thing about these pods, the right one of every pod has this technology called the Immersive Solstice app, which allows you to cast any digital device to it. So this left one, it can be anything, but it's going to be something that came from this workstation here from the professor, from the teacher. The right one, it could be technically anything. After the student logs in on their digital device, they could cast their phone, their iPad, their tablet, their laptop. It doesn't matter if it's a Mac or a PC. And so how this usually functions kind of as we work when I'm teaching them coding, I give them the code on the left side and a task to do with it. And on the right side, they work as a group and share the code with each other and work it through. And if they run into problems, I can take their problems and cast it to all the other groups over here. These are different students working in a group. And you can see there's a pod over here, up to pod here, and then back over here, kind of hidden, there's a pod here. This is the door that exits the hallway. And this door right here that's open, it actually has laptops for students to use that are have the software on it so that they're in a charging station at all times when students aren't using them. So the students can get a laptop, start working, put it back, it charges inside the tower that's inside this closet. And then there's a lot of Wi-Fi in the room. There's also audio in the room, so we can actually convert. We have cable television, so we could put something on cable and then try to watch in real time Twitter if we wanted to. There's really so many things we can do in the room that I haven't done because I haven't had time to figure out like the logistics of it. Like there's like the room can do much more than I've done with it. I haven't nearly come close to what the room can possibly do. So
okay, thank you. Thank you. Very, very helpful. So your turn, Keith. How did you get involved in this? Because
I was a new faculty member, and my chair at the time, Dr. Van Ins, was part of this group with English trying to set up this digital thing. And they didn't know exactly what to do. And so I got put on this task force to create this digital major. And then in the discussions, they realized we should probably start with a minor to see how that would go. And then Mo was added, and him and I started working together, and we got the minor through. And the minor, like Mo said, just exploded. It was massive. It was the biggest minor on campus. And we need to do something with this. What are we going to do? Let's change it into a bachelor now. We show the support for it. Then we show student interest in it. Let's make a bachelor's. And so there was talk about doing like similar thing, digital comm and new media thing, but how big it was. And then the other thing about getting a thing approved by Passion was that it had to be unique and not other schools. And so there are some digital communication majors at other institutions. There are some digital media things, but at the time we were putting together, when Mo and I started thinking about social media, there wasn't really anything there. The one that's on the PowerPoint that's at Columbia College in Chicago, they were developing it while we were developing it. So I think they might have barely beat us to the punch, but there's had a little more like journalism elements to it and a little more like advertising elements. They're different than us, but we're kind of similar to them. But then after we did, now there's a lot of interest in it. I got the State University of New York, Brockport, they reached out to me because they wanted to build a program like this. So I had a few Zoom calls with them last year about what it entails content-wise, course-wise, lab-wise. There's Elizabethtown College over towards Harrisburg, I think it is, have a like social media analytics or analytics kind of program. And so it's kind of similar to us, but it's only like one element of that Venn diagram. So we're kind of trying to give students a wider range. And in that wider range, they could also specialize. So they could say, well, you know, I have more affinity for this. But they also kind of understand how the parts work together. So they get a little bit of business savvy, they get a little bit of content creation and ethics, they get a little bit of analytics. And while they might not be a specialist in any of them, they'll know the parts and how they might work together. Or they could specialize, they could put more energy into one area there's a lot of flexibility in the degree. But and then the degree happened, and now, you know, then we changed it to have a minor in it, and we worked on the certificate because we wanted to help workforce recruitment. And now we just put forward the analytics certificate so that we could have more variety for the workforce. People who are interested.
So it was as much personal interest as it was academic training that led you into this. You sort of use your academic training to follow a personal interest. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think for me, I've kind of retooled myself. Like, I think I like the idea of constantly reshaping myself. Like, my undergrad is actually in philosophy, so like I like the ethical side of that, right? And then I have quantitative the stuff in my master's. I ran an experiment and ran a MANOVA and so forth. But then when I went to my PhD, I went a whole different route, and I went into like I don't know what to call it, but I went into like cultural things. And so I have like a wide variety of backgrounds. And then that kind of helped me kind of try to think of this as a broader thing instead of get too niche with it. Because I think the problem with this program is if we would have made it really niche and just be like content creation or art design creation, or if we would have just focused on the academic side of things or just the business side of things, it really wouldn't have the richness that it does. So I think Mo and I have more of a larger vision than niche, and that helps because now we play to each other's strengths. Like Dr. Mahoney over in English is teaching the writing and content stuff. I don't really deal with that. I've taught myself more coding over time. Like when I first got to Kutztown, I didn't code. Now I teach students all about how to do analytics. Like it's like this is the, you know, there's a great saying by the futurist what's his first name? Alvin Toffler, who says
Right.
the 21st century, it won't be whether you can read or write, but whether you can learn, unlearn, and relearn, right? Like, what you need to constantly be doing is reshaping because society and technology changes so rapidly. We're constantly, everybody's retooling to keep up. And if you don't, you get left behind. So you got to be able to teach yourself how to unlearn things and learn new things. And I'm hoping that we're kind of doing that for our students, giving them lots of different kinds of challenges where they're kind of reshaping themselves constantly.
Yeah, that's a very creative way of thinking about it. Yeah. Where do the students intern and where do they go when they graduate?
So internships, we usually have more internships than we have students. It really comes down to a couple things. The best internship that students kind of work for is there's a company in Harrisburg called WebFX, which has won best places to work like 5 years in a row. They pay $15 an hour to their interns, but they also get like 300 applicants, and the students have to have like a 3.7 GPA to even apply. And so we've had people get that internship, but it's a really competitive internship because about 300 people apply, and I think they take 30. So you got to be in the top 10 of just the applicants, and all the applicants have to have a 3.7 or higher. But we do have about 4 graduates who actually work there. So they might not got the internship, but they got jobs there. We have at Kutztown, the lead office for the Small Business Development Center for the state is here. And they used to have a program to take about 2 to 3 interns per semester. And then some things changed there. Some people moved and took different jobs, and there's a little bit of kind of chaos for a little bit. And now it's established itself again. And now they have interns again now. They're going to take interns in the fall. So there was a little period where we lost some interns there, and they pay like $10 an hour to that intern. So they get some of the better interns. But there's some places over in Allentown, like in Emmaus, there's altitude marketing that we have connections with. We have people in Norristown at this place called Little Miss Moffitt. It's a bakery that are designing kind of a campaign for promoting their product online. It really also kind of depends on the student. I've had a couple students that they wanted to be in a certain industry, so they didn't get paid, but they got in the industry. So one of them took a position at a record label that was just outside of Philly on the New Jersey side. I don't remember the city, but they actually set up the female artists Facebook page for that record label. So all the female artists and getting the people to push to the page for the female artists that were part of that record label because they wanted to be in the music industry. I also had someone take an unpaid one because they wanted to be in the fashion industry, and they got internship with a small fashion company in New York. And so it kind of depends on the student if they're more driven to, get certain skills or be in a certain location. If they're from the Reading area, they want to find that area, or they're in the Allentown area, or if they want a certain industry and they don't care about whether it's paid or not. As far as positions, our graduates get a lot of positions. I keep tracking them through LinkedIn, and it really varies from. Most of them stay in Philadelphia. Most of them stay in Pennsylvania, but a few actually leave. We've had one of the students who's currently about to graduate, she had an internship in California over the summer, last summer, at the CW, the television station. It's the CW. So it just.
Oh, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, the other side that we didn't really mention that much is we also built in, we have the marketing side, which is obviously we think of business, but we also have some courses that really focus on projects for nonprofits, right? Because that's a huge way for nonprofits to stay afloat. So we get a lot of students that are interested in nonprofits, but also the political side. So we've had students do internships for them, and sometimes even, work for political organization or even a particular campaign down the road. Just yesterday, somebody reached out to me. I don't even know how they got my phone number yet. I didn't even check, but from Diacon Lutheran Home. So the other thing too is a lot of times these aren't like on the books formal internships, and we have to work with them to create what it is, but like they find that they're overwhelmed with their social media. So they reach out to us and like, hey, we need a summer intern. We can pay this. We just need this many hours, and we just have to make sure that it's going to be on stuff for the internship and that they don't change their mind and have them, fetching coffee or, researching something instead of working on social media.
Yeah, you want it to be a meaningful experience. Go ahead, Keith.
And then another thing to add that people that kind of gets overlooked about the program is kind of just the educational element of it. Where now I went with a group to a middle school over in Emmaus to talk about social media. Mo and I went to Wilson High School over in Reading to talk to them about social media. They had a whole day just focused on social media, where they rotated 1/3 of the entire high school through the auditorium, and Mo and I talked to them. And now I'm in talks with the Fleetwood assistant superintendent about they want to actually kind of get some high school curriculum possibly going for high schoolers to start getting an idea about social media, the consequence of it, the value of it, and so forth. And Mo just made me think of this, but I just got an email not long ago, I think it was yesterday, about another high school that wants to talk to us about how do they start getting social media in their curriculum to some extent, which I had a conversation a couple of years ago with someone in the education college about would they be able to set up some type of like certification for like middle school and high school teachers to these skills and teach like an elective at that level. But the thing is that one of the individuals from one of our contacts in Allentown, Liquid Interactive, who was on the board of trustees, Mr. Ludlow, I gave him a tour. He was like, I think you have a tiger by the tail.
Yes.
I've heard that expression before, but man, it's like a rabbit hole. There's so much to it that can go so many different directions. It's like we're constantly trying to keep up with how many people have interest in it and how many different facets of life, because it just permeates. Like how we started the talk, it just permeates everything.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. 500 million tweets. That's scary. That's stunning. What do you do with all that?
Well, to be honest, we're now at the limits of our server. So I'm working with IT because we have to pause that TCAT and create another virtual server to start storing, because at some point everything gets bogged down because the operating system of the TCAT didn't get updated and patched because of some things. And so it's just a massive amount of data, but it's subdivided by tracking either a handle or a hashtag or a keyword. So like the coronavirus data, it's probably now at about, I'm going to guess it started decreasing because now that with COVID happening more, but it's probably about 200 and something million. But really useful data, I mean, when we did our study, I started with, I think, 138 million, But then by the time I take the English ones out, because it's a global phenomenon. So there's all these that are in Chinese and Japanese and Spanish, German. Once you filter it for English, you're down to about like 85 million. So, you know, the thing about it is that the things I teach my students, I usually work at about the 1500 mark for them. Here's 1500 tweets. It's big enough that they can't just read and try to figure it out. They need the computer to do it. But because the work is scalable, whatever I teach them, if I gave them 1 million, they could still do the work and get the answer from 1 million. It's just more data and it's more processing power in a computer. But when it's all said and done, whatever skill they get scales up to the size that I was doing. I mean, I did everything on a desktop. I didn't have any special computer to do it. Some of it took a while to process, but it's just after you know how to do certain things, it's just size that takes time. But
Yeah, time and energy.
Yeah.
Did you guys encounter any ethical issues? Did the students encounter any ethical issues in dealing with the Twitter stuff?
We did, I guess the first thing when I think of ethics, I always come back to something we almost did with the Smash. There was software called, what is it called? Geophedia.
Yeah.
Geophedia, we almost bought that software. It was really cool software. We got like, I got to take it for a test run. What it would do is it would put a virtual fence around a geographic location, and it would populate that with all the social media that happened in that geographic location, right? So you could say like, okay, I want to go this area of Kutztown, see what people are posting in that area. And so we almost got that, so we could use it for research and get students engaged in that thing. But then what happened with Geophedia is that they actually went bankrupt because of a lawsuit, because they ended up giving the access to police departments, and one of the police departments started using it to track protesters at a protest after they left the protest. So they were tracking people who were peacefully protesting, they nonviolent, and now they're being tracked by the authorities. And so there was some lawsuit, I don't know, it's class action or something, and it ended up destroying the company. So that was close to the time we were going to get it. So, you know, there's ethics of how to use something and not exploit it.
Right.
And, you know, I tried to use it once, you know, it's kind of sad, but there was someone from out of town in Kutztown, I think they're from New Jersey or New York. There was a stabbing that happened in Kutztown and they were looking for evidence. So I took the Geophedia and I went to the area of the stabbing and I put a fence around it and I populated it thinking, well, what if somebody was taking a selfie and in the background is the person, that, you know, the event, right? You never know what's in an image. And so it populated, but didn't have anything. But, you know, you can use social media as a crime fighting tool. You know, the people at Illinois State, they've set up some of their monitors to track if somebody's saying things that could lead to violence on campus. So, you know, there's a lot of ways to use the resources that you have.
Twitter, you know, is obviously a fairly significant resource and activity on the internet and social media. Are there other similar sorts of things you guys do an analysis of? Or is it really focused largely, almost exclusively on Twitter?
So, I'll speak from
I'm gonna let Mo talk eventually too. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think when it's all said and done, we use Twitter because it's easier. You have to get access to the data, and the TCAT gives us that. Getting access to Facebook data after the 2016 election and getting data from Instagram and other sources is really challenging. I spent a summer, a couple of summers ago, trying to get access to Instagram, and there really seems to be only 3 types of entities that are allowed backdoor access to Instagram, and education doesn't count as one of them. So I could not, if you can't get the API keys, if you can't get the access points, then you actually can't get the data from it. So you don't have anything to analyze in that regard on the large scale. You could still do it on the smaller scale, and probably some of the things that get done in some of the content things classes, probably on the smaller scale, could do those. But as far as large scale things, Twitter's the only one that gives easier access to it.
Mo, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You know, Twitter for a while was just a bit of an anomaly. We would have even students be able to create bots and test out how the bots worked and how people interacted with them until they locked some of that down as well. But this also shows why this discipline is so hard to do, especially from the academic side, because it's impossible to have a complete handle on all three of those circles in our Venn diagram. But also it's hard to anticipate because we are every day we have to check what's going on with, you know, okay, now Elon Musk bought Twitter, now it's changing. Now all of a sudden here's TikTok, but we won't be able to monitor those in the same way, right? That's held by a different country, a different
Right.
proprietary algorithm. So on the same token, I use a lot of stylistic analysis through my training. My PhD's in rhetoric and technical communication, and that's one of my focus. So we can pull out the style. It's a little tedious because we don't have access to the back end to do it easily, but we can run things through like Voyant tools, and we can do all kinds of analyses on even the grade level on the average of 300, you know, social media posts. We start to triangulate which ones had the most reach and the least reach, and see how does the style of how you put that together impact the reach. We can even run visual rhetoric emoticon tests, and plus hashtag tracking and trying to find the sweet spot, you know, of the number of hashtags, because that's one of the funny things. If you've been keeping an eye on Chat GPT, we've been doing some tests on those versus actual human produced content. And it's funny, like the generic use of the hashtags is always the same, and the actual style of the tweets is always this kind of homogeneous, kind of, I don't know, I call it happy junior high writing. It's kind of what it sounds like. So, so at least we can get it from that, even if we don't have access to a lot of the high-end tools. Like Keith said, they can change too. So we thought Geophedia would be great. And then we also had to consider, how might our students use this? They could use it in a bad way if they get into the lab. And then it turned out they didn't stick around either. So that's like what Keith is saying. We're trying to find ways to do things that are sustainable for our students, or they don't lose access to it after graduation.
Yeah, and you know, the ethical challenges are things that you have to be attentive to. The mobile lab that you take out, where, go back and you can and tell us where you've taken that before, and if somebody's interested in having it come to their institution, what can they do?
So I've taken it to like recruiting events on campus, like where students are coming to see things. I've taken it down to the Community College of Philadelphia. That was like a recruiting event. It doesn't really have any software embedded in it. It's really just hardware. So it can allow for the two screens and one of the screens to allow any digital device. So that gives me flexibility of what I can put on the second screen, like in the lab, but it's not going to have any of the software. But if I take a laptop that has the software, then I can share that on one.
Right.
So
Right.
the mobile device allows more for the visuals of things than the actual things themselves. Like it allows for people that more than one person to see at a time, but usually you need a laptop that has the stuff on it.
And so if somebody's interested in having it come, they should reach out to one of the two of you to have that.
Yep.
Because I would think, yeah, frankly, there are other colleges, some other institutions around here that might be very interested in at least just getting exposed to what you're doing.
Yeah, I would be open to going wherever somebody could create an audience that had interest in either having interns of our students, hiring our students, taking our certificates. I'll go give a talk with the mobile unit wherever you have interest.
Which gets me to another question, the certificate program. You know, I understand majors and minors and college degrees, but how's the certificate program work and who can apply for it?
The certificates they're relatively new, so they tend to be 9 credits. Ours was actually the very first one Kutztown put through, and it was 12. Now they're saying they have to be 9. So there's always a little bit of give and take there. But the idea for those was that they would be open to like business professionals. They could be open to, you know, anybody that's 18 with a college degree who had some interest in kind of trying out some of the subjects, or just simply needed a small accreditation on the side.
And how do they find out about the certificate program? Where do they go to if they want to learn more about it or enroll in it?
I put a link to the original check sheet, Keith. I don't know if you have one for the new one because it won't be on the website because it's not official yet. But usually I hear from a lot of people weekly about, say, for example, our technical writing one. But one small issue is we're kind of restricted in the amount of online classes we're allowed to offer at this current moment in time. And that's usually what people reach out for is, can I do this completely online? When we first conceptualized it, the answer was yes, but we've been having trouble being able to offer enough online
Some
classes.
restrictions for that. Yeah, you did some of the old ones, so I will share that with everybody who we send the video to as well. So if I'm a business and want to find an intern, what do I do?
You could reach out to Mo or I. I mean, we usually what I do when someone reaches out is I access the list of students in the major, and I take all the juniors and all the seniors email and I just send it directly to the students. Here's a possible one, and they usually have their choice. But there's usually things that draw them. Either it's paid or it's in the right place. Like the ones that are more local, they like, or if they're from Reading or if they're from Allentown and it's there, they're drawn by location. Or if it's in the area that they're really interested in, like, oh, I want to be doing this kind of work, or I want to be in this industry. Like, oh, it's going to be content creation. That's what I want to develop as a skill more. Or this, I want to analyze things. That's what this is. So they get plenty of emails from me, so they know to look at all the intern possibilities.
Yeah, I can imagine you probably have more demand than you have supply.
Yeah, right now, I mean, I think higher ed is kind of dipping a little bit. It's recovering, but we actually peaked at about 88 majors, and now we're down to about 52, I think. And that COVID made a real impact on things. I think we've stabilized. We're not dropping anymore, and we're starting to climb again. But as we grow more, maybe we'll be looking for more internship spots. But right now, like Mo said, we had a student who had a job lined up before they graduated, way before they graduated. They signed the contract and everything. They just had to wait to get through the rest of their year.
Yeah, you were saying they get all hired as a junior, which is amazing.
I mean, there's clearly valuable, and people see that value.
And I just posted a link for the Career Development Center. So they will actually host any kind of internship for any particular job. But a lot of times we get people specifically for social media, because if you post it there, you could hear from,
Right.
50 different majors. So a lot of people try to keep it a little more focused.
Okay.
But theoretically, we're supposed to post it there, but we talk to the director quite a bit, and she understands the conundrum our program is in because it's interdisciplinary, but also very specific.
Okay, that's helpful. So where's this program going to be in 5 years, in 10 years?
Ooh, Keith, I'll let
I think one thing is the Smash will go through an update at some point. The people at Illinois State, they updated their hardware software just last year. So we're going to get to a point where we're going to have to upgrade and update the Smash at some point, and that's probably going to happen within the next 5 years. I think the growth rate of students will probably keep trending upwards, and it's going to grow. But you never know with regards to the actual content of what's covered. Like, for all we know, there's a brand new thing that isn't TikTok, and it grows and becomes this thing. Like, it's this this beast with multiple heads, and some of them die out. Some look like they're going to die out, and they don't die out. Like, I don't think MySpace is coming back, but I'm not sure what's going to still be around in 5 years.
Mo, your guess?
Well, yeah, we'll definitely have to do some updates, but that's the other interesting thing. There's always a push and pull as to what tools you have to work with. versus what tools are being used in social media. But I'd say two things that certainly aren't going away is there's always a notion, and that's only getting more stretched by AI, is authenticity and effectiveness, right? And how those two go together. I don't know if you follow, but now that everybody's so worried about the AI generating,
Yeah,
how do we check for authenticity? Now people are diving into developing AI to check authenticity because it's going to be better at spotting small digital footprints than the actual humans are, especially in images. Because the last testing research I've seen says it's really no better than chance right now. This is before ChatGPT getting better as to humans picking out real from fake content. And that's in a static image. And now in the last month, we have ones that are doing much better at generating videos based on prompts.
yeah, that's changing really rapidly. So that could be an area that there's some interest or some activity in.
Mm-hmm. So to have our students be able to understand that side of it and be able to produce high level content and analyze at a high level, we certainly have a lot of challenges to stay up to date.
Well, we're close to the end. Any final words either of you want to give to our audience, to the people who are here and the people who will watch the video?
We've also been approached quite a bit from our administration about offering summer programs, whether it's like a week-long intensive workshop or something like that, even for high school students, but business professionals. So if there actually are people that are interested in that, I think we would be much more apt to work on it if we knew there was a true audience for it, because the application process is definitely going to take some work and some planning to put it together. But if that's something that your viewers have an interest in, we would love to put something like that on.
So they should reach out to you about that. Good. Keith?
Yeah, that's a good point that Mo made. I think that's what I should have said too. I would have thought of it. Like we kind of get stretched kind of thin, all the things that need to be done. And so we have to be really strategic with how we use our time. But we've been asked for a while to possibly set up like a summer workshop that would either maybe for graduating seniors, or maybe graduating seniors of high school, or maybe for business professionals. It would have to take kind of an angle, but we haven't really put energy into that because it's some work to set up, and we want to make sure it will be successful. And we have plenty of other things pulling us to do, setting up relationships with high schools or middle schools, setting up this and that,
Right.
and then do research. So like if we got enough feedback that people clearly had that interest, there was enough interest there, Mo and I would probably put that workshop together in no time for a summer
Okay.
shop.
Thank you. We've hit our stopping point, but this has been, it's still an amazing thing what you guys are doing, and just incredible. It's going to be fun to see how it changes and morphs over time. Great job. Great job.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you for that. Reminder to everybody, we will send you a copy of the video for this program, plus some of the information that was in the chat function. And we look forward to seeing you in the future at some of our future events. Mo and Keith, thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks again for having us.
Thank you.